You're standing at a bakery counter, counting crumpled dollar bills with trembling fingers. $50. That's all you have. That's everything you've saved for months to give your twin daughters a birthday worth remembering. You've worked double shifts, skipped meals, worn the same shoes until they fell apart, all so you could stand here in this small harbor town bakery and watch your 7-year-old girls smile at birthday cupcakes. And then you look up. Across the room, a man in an expensive suit is staring at your daughters. His knuckles are white around his coffee cup. His face has gone pale as death. You recognize him instantly. He's the man who abandoned you 7 years ago, the father of your children, the billionaire CEO who, according to his family, paid you $1 million to disappear from his life forever. Except you never took that money. You tore that check in half and threw it in his mother's face. And now he's here, watching your daughters blow out their birthday candles, watching them make the same wish they've made every single birthday for 7 years. We wish we could meet our dad. What would you do? Would you run? Would you scream? Would you shield your children from the man who broke your heart, or would you finally demand the answers you've deserved for 7 agonizing years? Here's the thing that makes this story different. Here's the twist that will shake you to your core. He didn't know. The billionaire CEO sitting across that bakery, watching his daughters for the first time in his life. He had no idea they existed. For 7 years, he believed the woman he loved had taken his family's money and vanished. For 7 years, he thought she'd chosen cash over him. They were both wrong. They were both victims of a devastating lie. And now, in this tiny bakery in Crescent Bay, 7 years of secrets, manipulation, and heartbreak are about to collide in a single earth-shattering moment. What happens next will change 4 lives forever. Stay with me until the end of this story, because I promise you, what this billionaire CEO does when he discovers the truth will leave you in tears. And they won't be tears of sadness. If you believe in second chances and the power of truth, and in the idea that love can survive even the cruelest lies, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to change the way you see family, forgiveness, and what it really means to fight for the people you love. Let's begin. The morning fog clung to Crescent Bay like a silver blanket, softening the edges of fishing boats and salt-worn buildings that lined the harbor. It was the kind of coastal town that tourists pass through on their way to somewhere else, charming but forgettable, beautiful but poor. Celeste Morrow stood outside Harbor Light Bakery, her fingers numb from the October chill as she counted the money in her wallet for the 4th time. $52.17. She closed her eyes and breathed. It would have to be enough. Behind her, 2 identical faces pressed against the bakery's frosted window, their breath creating twin circles of fog on the cold glass. Dark hair, storm-gray eyes, 7 years old today, and completely unaware of the calculations running through their mother's mind. "Mama, look at the mermaid cake." Violet's voice carried that breathless wonder that still managed to pierce through Celeste's exhaustion. "It has real seashells on it." "The sea glass cookies are prettier," Iris countered, adjusting her glasses with the practical wisdom of a child who had learned too early that prettier things often cost more. "And probably less expensive." Less expensive. Celeste's heart clenched. Her daughter was 7. 7-year-olds shouldn't understand phrases like less expensive. They shouldn't know that their mother lay awake at night, calculating whether she could afford both electricity and groceries in the same week. But Iris knew. Iris watched. Iris understood. And Celeste had never been able to hide the truth from her perceptive, serious-eyed older twin. "Birthday princesses don't worry about prices," Celeste said, forcing brightness into her voice as she tucked the money away. "That's Mama's job. Now, who's ready for their special birthday breakfast?" "Me," both girls chorused, their earlier debate forgotten. This bakery was their sacred space. Once a year, no matter how tight money became, no matter how many extra shifts Celeste worked, no matter what had to be sacrificed, she brought her daughters here. It was the one extravagance she refused to surrender, the one thread connecting them to a life that might have been different. The bell above the door chimed as they entered, and immediately warmth enveloped them. Not just from the industrial ovens filling the air with the scent of butter and sugar and salt, but from Eleanor Hayes, the bakery's silver-haired owner, who emerged from behind the counter with arms spread wide. "There are my favorite mermaids," Eleanor exclaimed, kneeling to embrace both girls. 7 years old. My goodness, where does the time fly? "We're in 2nd grade now," Iris informed her with characteristic seriousness. And I can read chapter books, Violet added, never one to let her sister claim all the accomplishments. Brilliant girls, both of you. Just like your mother. Eleanor's eyes met Celeste's over the twins' heads, conveying years of unspoken understanding. Your usual table is ready. I'll bring out something special. As Celeste guided her daughters to the corner booth, their booth, the one with the view of the harbor where fishing boats rock gently in the morning tide, she allowed herself a moment of gratitude. Eleanor had been charging them half price since the twins' second birthday. They never discussed it. Eleanor simply handed her a receipt with numbers that didn't quite add up, and Celeste simply paid them without comment. It was a kindness wrapped in dignity, and Celeste had never found words adequate enough to express what it meant. Mama, can we get the sunrise pancakes? Violet asked, already studying the laminated menu she knew by heart. With the birthday candles? Whatever my birthday girls want. Celeste calculated quickly. 2 children's portions, $12. 1 coffee for herself, $3. A modest tip. That would leave just enough for... The bakery door opened. A gust of autumn wind swept through the warm space, carrying with it the salt smell of the harbor and something else. Something that made Celeste's skin prickle with inexplicable awareness. She didn't look up immediately. Crescent Bay occasionally attracted tourists, wealthy visitors from Boston or Providence, passing through on their way to Martha's Vineyard or Cape Cod. Expensive. Cars weren't uncommon, especially in autumn when the coastal foliage drew photographers and day trippers. But something made her glance toward the entrance. Some dormant instinct, some fragment of memory fighting toward the surface of her consciousness. The man who stood in the doorway was tall, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He wore a charcoal cashmere coat that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His shoes had never known a discount rack. His posture spoke of boardrooms and corner offices and a world so far removed from Crescent Bay that he might as well have stepped out of a different dimension. Then his gaze swept the bakery, landed on her daughters, landed on her, and the world stopped. Julian Blackwood had not intended to stop in Crescent Bay. His driver had taken a wrong turn somewhere along the coastal highway, and the fog had transformed the winding roads into a maze of uncertainty. When they'd passed the small harbor town, with its weathered storefronts and its boats bobbing in the morning mist, something had compelled him to ask the car to pull over. He couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it. There was simply a pull, an inexplicable gravity drawing him toward this unremarkable place. He told himself he just needed coffee. Directions back to the main highway. 30 minutes, maximum, and then he'd be on his way to the meeting that would finalize a merger worth $800 million. But the moment he stepped into Harbor Light Bakery, Julian Blackwood's carefully ordered life began to unravel. He noticed the birthday celebration first. A corner booth, candles flickering on cupcakes, 2 small girls with dark hair and familiar features, their faces bright with excitement as an older woman sang happy birthday in a warm off-key voice. Twins, identical, around 6 or 7 years old. Something about them made Julian pause. Something about the angle of their jaws, the gray of their eyes, the particular way the more serious one adjusted her glasses. And then the girl's mother turned slightly, and Julian's heart stopped beating. Celeste Morrow, the marine biologist who had taught him to see the world as more than profit margins and acquisition targets. The woman who had made him believe in things he'd been raised to dismiss as weaknesses. The woman who, according to his grandmother, had accepted $1 million to disappear from his life forever. 7 years ago, she had vanished without a word. 7 years ago, his grandmother had shown him the canceled check, had explained with that cold Blackwood practicality that the girl had taken the money and chosen to remove herself from Julian's life before she could become an embarrassment. He had believed it. He had mourned her betrayal in private, rebuilt his walls, and never allowed himself to be that vulnerable again. But now she was here, in this tiny bakery, in this forgettable town, looking older, thinner, wearing clothes that spoke of thrift stores and careful mending. And those girls, those twins with the gray eyes and the dark hair and the familiar features. How old are they? The question screamed through Julian's mind, even as his body refused to move. How old? Count the years. Count the months. Count backward from this moment to the last time you held her. Sir? The bakery owner's voice reached him from very far away. Are you all right? You've gone quite pale. Julian's legs carried him to a table, the closest one with a clear view of the corner booth. His hands were trembling as he lowered himself into the chair. "Coffee," he managed. "Please." His eyes never left the family across the room. 7 years old. They're clearly 7 years old. And 7 years ago, 9 months before they would have been born. "Those children," he said when Eleanor returned with his cup. His voice was hoarse, strange even to his own ears. "The twins. How old are they today?" Eleanor's expression shifted, warmth fading into wariness. "And why would a stranger be asking about my customer's children?" "Please." The word came out broken, desperate. "I just need to know." Something in his expression must have conveyed the magnitude of the moment, because Eleanor's stance softened almost imperceptibly. "They turned 7 today. Their mama brings them here every year for their birthday, saves all year just for this breakfast." She shook her head, something sad in her eyes. "Breaks my heart, watching her count those dollars, but she never misses it. Not once in 5 years. Saves all year. Counts those dollars." The woman Julian had been told took $1 million payoff could barely afford birthday pancakes. "She comes here often?" he asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Just once a year, for their birthday. This is their special tradition." Eleanor studied him with new intensity. "Do you know them?" Julian's throat closed around the words. "I used to know their mother, a long time ago." Eleanor's gaze was measuring now. "Celeste is one of the good ones, raising those girls all on her own. Works 2 jobs, never complains, though Lord knows she could. Whatever happened between you two, I hope you know she deserved better than whatever put that sadness in her eyes. 2 jobs, raising them all on her own. Sadness in her eyes." Every word was a knife, slicing through the narrative Julian had accepted for 7 years. Celeste hadn't taken his family's money and built a comfortable life elsewhere. She hadn't abandoned him for a better offer. She had been here, struggling, alone, raising his children. The realization crashed through him like a rogue wave, restructuring everything he thought he knew. "Those are my daughters." At that moment, across the bakery, the birthday song ended. The twins leaned forward, eyes closed, faces scrunched in concentration as they made their wish. "What did you wish for?" Celeste's voice carried across the quiet bakery. The more animated twin, Violet, Eleanor had called her, exchanged a glance with her sister. Then she spoke, her voice soft but clear enough for Julian to hear every devastating word. "We wished we could meet our dad, just once, just to see what he's like." Julian's coffee cup slipped from his fingers. It shattered on the floor, brown liquid spreading across the worn wooden boards, but he barely noticed. He was staring at his daughters, watching them wish for the father who had been kept from them. The father who hadn't known they existed until this moment. The father who was sitting 20 feet away, watching his entire world reshape itself around a truth that changed everything. Celeste's head snapped toward the sound of breaking ceramic. Their eyes met, and Julian saw recognition flood her face, followed immediately by fear, then fury, then a fierce protectiveness that made her whole body shift between him and the girls. "She thinks I knew," he realized with sickening clarity. "She thinks I abandoned them. The same way he had thought she'd abandoned him. 7 years of lies. 7 years of manipulation. 7 years of 2 people who had loved each other, believing the worst because someone had wanted them to." The question was no longer what had happened. The question was, what happened now? "Let me take you back. 7 years before that morning in Crescent Bay. Before the twins existed. Before the lies had calcified into certainty." Celeste Morrow stood in the marble foyer of the Blackwood mansion, her hands trembling as she faced Margaret Blackwood's glacial stare. She had come to tell Julian about the pregnancy. 2 pink lines on a test that morning had changed everything, and she needed to tell the man she loved that they were going to be parents. But Julian wasn't there. Instead, she found his grandmother, the matriarch of the Blackwood Empire, 80 years old and sharp as a blade, draped in pearls and disapproval. "Julian isn't available," Margaret had said, each word precisely placed. "But perhaps it's for the best. We need to have a conversation, you and I. I really need to speak with him." Celeste had fought to keep her voice steady. "It's important. I'm sure it is." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Let me guess. You've found yourself in an interesting condition, and you're hoping my grandson will come to the rescue. How convenient." Just as the board is considering him for CEO, Celeste had stared at her, shock giving way to anger. "That's not why I'm here. I love Julian, and he deserves to know about his child. What he deserves is the future he's worked for, the future generations of Blackwoods have built. Margaret had opened a drawer, removing an envelope and sliding it across the antique table. Inside is a check for $1 million. Take it, disappear, and handle your situation discreetly. In return, you'll never contact my grandson again. The casualness of it. The cold calculation. As if Celeste's baby, their baby, was simply a problem to be solved with the right amount of money. You think I want your money? Celeste's voice shook with fury. I came here to tell Julian he's going to be a father, not to blackmail your family. Call it whatever you like. The offer stands. Margaret's expression hardened. Refuse, and I'll ensure you regret it. Julian is about to sign a new trust agreement with a morality clause. Any scandal, like an unexpected pregnancy, with a woman of your background, would cost him his inheritance and his position. Is that what you want? To destroy him because of your carelessness? I need to speak to Julian. Let him make his own decision. And then Margaret delivered the blow that would haunt Celeste for 7 years. He already has. Her voice was smooth as poison. Why do you think he's not here to meet you? He knows about your visit today. He knows about your condition. He asked me to handle it. She gestured to the envelope. This was his idea. A clean break, no messy entanglements. My grandson has always understood that business must come first. The lie was so convincing, so perfectly crafted, delivered with such cold certainty that Celeste had felt her world collapse around her. He knows. He sent his grandmother to pay me off. He doesn't want me. He doesn't want our baby. She had left the envelope untouched on the table, walked out of that mansion with her head high and her heart shattered. And in the weeks that followed, she had tried, desperately, relentlessly, to reach Julian directly. Phone calls that went to voicemail, texts that were never returned, emails that vanished into silence. Finally, a letter, handwritten, poured from her soul, explaining everything about the pregnancy, begging him to respond, giving him every chance to prove his grandmother wrong. Nothing. No response. No acknowledgement. No sign that the man she loved had ever received a single word. What Celeste didn't know, couldn't have known, was that none of her messages ever reached Julian. Margaret Blackwood had installed a carefully chosen assistant in Julian's office. Every call was filtered. Every email was deleted. Every letter was intercepted and destroyed. And when Julian asked about Celeste, when he wondered why the woman he loved had suddenly stopped returning his calls, Margaret presented him with fabricated evidence. A canceled check, forged but convincing. An explanation. The girl took the money. She's gone. I'm sorry, Julian, but she was never what you believed her to be. Julian had been devastated. Then furious. Then cold. He had rebuilt his walls, higher and stronger than before. Thrown himself into the company with ruthless focus. Become the CEO his grandmother always wanted him to be, successful, driven, and utterly alone. 2 people who loved each other. 2 people who spent 7 years believing the worst. Both of them victims of the same lie. Think about that for a moment. 7 years. That's first words. First steps. First days of school. First loose teeth. First nightmares comforted. First scraped knees kissed better. First I love you, Mama, and I love you, Daddy. Except there was no Daddy, because one woman's desire for control had stolen him from his children before they were ever born. All those years. All that pain. All that struggle and loneliness and wondering why. And none of it had to happen. None of it. Celeste moved quickly after recognizing Julian. She paid their bill, leaving Eleanor more than she could afford as a tip, and ushered the twins out of the bakery with barely contained urgency. Her heart was hammering. Her hands were shaking. Every protective instinct she possessed was screaming at her to get her daughters away from the man who had abandoned them. But she wasn't fast enough. Celeste. His voice stopped her on the sidewalk. That voice she had loved. That voice she had ached to hear for 7 years. That voice she now associated with rejection and silence and the cold mathematics of Blackwood money. She turned slowly, positioning herself between Julian and the twins. Girls, go wait by the car. I need to talk to this man for a moment. But, Mama, Violet started. Now, please. Something in her tone, the barely controlled fear, perhaps made both girls obey without further argument. They retreated to the ancient sedan parked down the street, watching with identical expressions of concern. We need to talk, Julian said. Do we? Celeste's voice was ice. After 7 years of silence, Now you want to talk? What new conditions has your family attached to their money this time? What money? Julian's confusion seemed genuine, but she refused to trust it. Celeste, my grandmother said you took the payment, that you chose to disappear rather than… I never took a single cent. The words exploded from her. I tore that check in half and threw it in Margaret Blackwood's face. I told her I would never accept blood money to abandon my children's father. Julian went very still. She showed me the canceled check, he said slowly. $1 million deposited into your account. A forgery or a fabrication. I don't know how she did it, but I never saw that money. I never wanted that money. Celeste's composure was cracking, years of suppressed fury breaking through. What I wanted was for you to answer my calls, to respond to my letters, to show even the slightest sign that you gave a damn about the children we made together. Letters? Julian's face had gone pale. You sent letters? Dozens, explaining the pregnancy, begging you to respond, telling you about the twins after they were born. Her voice broke on the word. I thought you read them. I thought you knew about Violet and Iris and simply chose to pretend they didn't exist. I never received them. The words were hoarse. Any of them. My grandmother must have intercepted everything. The implications hung between them, heavy, terrible, reshaping 7 years of assumptions. You didn't know? Celeste's fury wavered, replaced by something more complicated. About the pregnancy? About the girls? I found out 15 minutes ago. Julian's eyes were wet. When I saw them through the bakery window. When I realized they had my eyes, my features. When I heard them wish for the father they'd never met. Celeste stared at him. For 7 years, she had imagined this moment. Imagined confronting Julian with his cowardice, his abandonment, his choice of inheritance over family. She had rehearsed the words 1,000 times, the accusations, the condemnations, the righteous fury of a woman wronged. But this scenario, both of them lied to, both of them victims, this had never been part of her imagination. She destroyed us, Celeste whispered. Your grandmother. She destroyed us and you never knew. I believed her. Julian's voice was ravaged. When she said you took the money, I believed her. I was devastated, then angry, then I buried it, threw myself into work, became exactly what she wanted me to be. And I raised our daughters alone. The words weren't accusatory now, just tired. Immeasurably tired. Working double shifts, counting every penny, explaining to them, every Father's Day, why their daddy wasn't there. I'm so sorry. The words were inadequate, and Julian seemed to know it. I know that means nothing. I know 7 years of absence can't be erased with an apology. But I need you to know, if I had known, if I had received even one of your messages, I would have been here. Nothing would have kept me away. The silence between them was different now. Not the silence of enemies facing each other, but the silence of two people standing in the wreckage of something that should never have been destroyed. What do we do now? Celeste finally asked, the impossible question. Julian looked toward the car, where 2 7-year-old girls watched with anxious faces. I don't know, he admitted, but I want to find out. I want to know them. I want to be their father, the father they've been wishing for. It's not that simple. You can't just appear after 7 years and… I know, he cut her off gently. I know I have no right to demand anything, but I'm asking, Celeste. Not as a Blackwood, not as a CEO, just as a man who just discovered he has 2 daughters and wants desperately not to miss another moment of their lives. If this story is gripping your heart right now, hit that like button. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you do if you discovered you'd been lied to for 7 years? Would you forget? Would you trust again? And subscribe, because this story is far from over. The best part is still coming. Telling 7-year-old girls that the father they'd wished for at every birthday was suddenly standing in a bakery parking lot proved to be one of the most difficult conversations of Celeste's life. She sat them down that evening in their tiny living room, with its second-hand furniture and carefully mended cushions and walls she'd never had time to repaint, and searched for words that could explain the unexplainable. Remember the man from the bakery, the one whose coffee cup broke? Violet nodded vigorously. He looked sad and scared. Iris adjusted her glasses. He was staring at us. I didn't like it. Celeste took a deep breath. That man, his name is Julian Blackwood, and he's your father. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Iris's eyes went wide behind her glasses. Violet's mouth dropped open. 2 identical faces processed this information with the intensity only children can muster. Our real dad? Iris finally whispered. The one in the pictures? Yes, sweetheart. But, Violet's face scrunched with confusion. You said he couldn't be with us. You said he had important work far away. I thought that was true. Celeste's throat tightened. It turns out there was a mix-up. Someone kept us apart. Someone made it so your father didn't know you existed. He didn't know about us. Iris's analytical mind was already working. How could he not know? How, indeed? Someone lied to him, and to me. We both thought things that weren't true. Celeste reached for both their hands. But now he knows, and he wants very much to meet you. To be part of your lives. When? Violet's earlier wariness had transformed into something else. Hope, tentative but real. Soon. If you want to. We wished for this, Iris said quietly. Every birthday, we wished and wished. I know, baby. Is he nice? Violet asked. Celeste hesitated, memories surfacing, Julian's determination, his intensity, but also the gentleness he'd shown her in their stolen moments together. The man who had read poetry to her on midnight boat rides. The man who had listened to her dreams and made her believe they could come true. He can be very nice, she finally said. And he's very smart, like both of you. Does he like butterflies? Violet's current obsession required this crucial information. I don't know. You'll have to ask him yourself. The first meeting was arranged for the following evening. Dinner at their apartment, familiar territory for the twins, with Celeste present as both buffer and guardian. When Julian knocked on the door at exactly 6 o'clock, the twins nearly vibrated through the floor with nervous excitement. Wait here, Celeste instructed. Let me talk to him first. She opened the door to find Julian standing in the narrow hallway, looking more uncertain than any billionaire CEO had a right to look. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a casual sweater, nothing that screamed of the wealth he possessed. In his hands he held a small gift bag. You said no expensive presents, he said before she could speak. This isn't expensive, it's just meaningful. Celeste nodded, stepping back to let him enter. The apartment was small, modest. Every piece of furniture told a story of careful saving and smart choices. Julian took it in without judgment, his expression soft rather than condescending. They're waiting, Celeste said. They're nervous, excited, scared, all of it. That makes 4 of us. She almost smiled. The twins were perched on the edge of the worn couch when Julian entered the living room. 2 pairs of gray eyes, his eyes, looked up at him with identical expressions of cautious wonder. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Julian slowly lowered himself to their level, kneeling on the threadbare carpet so they didn't have to look up at him. Hello, he said softly. I'm very glad to meet you both. I'm Iris, said the serious twin, adjusting her glasses. I'm 6 minutes older. And I'm Violet. The other bounced slightly on the cushion. Do you really not know about us this whole time? Leave it to children to ask the questions adults dance around. No, Julian answered honestly. I didn't, and I'm very sorry about that. If I had known, I would have been here from the beginning. Mama said someone kept the news from you. Iris's brow furrowed. Was it a bad guy? Something flickered across Julian's face. Pain, anger, grief. It was someone who thought they were doing the right thing, but made a very big mistake. Like when someone tells a lie to protect someone, but it actually hurts them? Iris asked. Exactly like that. Violet studied him with unnerving intensity. You have our eyes, or you have mine. Julian's voice caught. I brought something for you, not because it's expensive, it's not, but because it means something. He offered the gift bag. Violet grabbed it eagerly while Iris watched more cautiously. Inside was a small leather-bound photo album. As the twins opened it together, Celeste moved closer to see. The album held photographs she'd never seen before. Julian as a boy, around the twins' age, playing with circuit boards and building blocks. Julian as a teenager with a science fair trophy. Julian in college, sketching blueprints on a whiteboard. That's me when I was your age, he explained, pointing to the first photo. I was just learning how things worked, taking apart radios, building robots that usually didn't work. I do that too, Violet exclaimed, her shyness evaporating. Mom says I'm not allowed to take apart the toaster anymore, though. A reasonable boundary. Julian's eyes met Celeste's briefly. Maybe we could build something together sometime, something new. Can we, if your mother agrees. He turned to Iris, who had been quietly studying the photographs with her usual intensity. "What about you? Do you like building things?" Iris shook her head. "I like reading. And math. I'm the best in my class at multiplication." "Really?" Julian's face lit up with genuine interest. "I loved math at your age too." It made sense when a lot of other things didn't. Iris nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. Recognition, perhaps. Two analytical minds finding common ground. "Exactly," she said. Dinner was simpler after that. Celeste had made spaghetti and meatballs, the twins' favorite, acutely aware of the contrast between her modest home cooking and the gourmet meals Julian probably enjoyed. But he accepted his plate with genuine thanks, complimenting the food without a hint of condescension. The twins peppered him with questions. His favorite color, blue. His favorite animal, sea turtles, a connection to Celeste he didn't explain. Whether he had a dog, no, but he'd always wanted one. What his job actually involved, making technology that helped people, simplified for 7-year-old comprehension. He answered everything with patience and honesty, tailoring his responses to their level without talking down to them. After dinner, he read them a bedtime story, Charlotte's Web, a chapter they'd been working through, and his deep voice brought the words to life in ways that made both girls listen with rapt attention. By the time he emerged from their bedroom, they were asleep. "They're remarkable," he said quietly to Celeste. "Kind and curious and brilliant. You've done an incredible job with them. They made it easy. Most days." Julian nodded, struggling with words he clearly needed to say. "Thank you, for tonight, for giving me this chance to know them. They've wished for you every birthday for 5 years. They deserve to know their father. And what about you?" The question was gentle. "What do you deserve?" Celeste had no answer for that. The next morning, Julian Blackwood stood in his grandmother's sitting room, with 7 years of evidence spread across the antique coffee table between them. Margaret Blackwood, still formidable at 82, studied the documents with an expression of cool disdain that didn't quite mask her discomfort. "Where did you get these? Does it matter?" Julian's voice could have frozen the harbor. The voided check, the intercepted emails, the letter Celeste sent explaining her pregnancy, the letter you made sure I never received, the birth certificates of my daughters. Your granddaughters, children you knew about all along. Margaret's composure slipped. "You've seen them then?" "Yesterday, for the first time, 7 years after they were born." Julian struggled to contain his fury. "How could you, grandmother? How could you keep my own children from me?" "I did what was necessary." Margaret straightened, her aristocratic bearing a shield she'd wielded for 8 decades. "You were about to take control of the company. The board was watching for any sign of instability. A pregnancy with that girl would have derailed everything we'd built for generations. That girl has a name, Celeste, the mother of my children." Julian's voice dropped to something dangerous. "And they're not just any children. They're brilliant, thoughtful, amazing daughters, who've been growing up without their father because of your manipulation. You weren't ready for fatherhood, your career, your future. That wasn't your decision to make." The words echoed through the elegant room. "You had no right to intercept her messages, to lie to her about me wanting her gone, to lie to me about her taking money. I did what I thought was best. For you, for the Blackwood legacy." "The Blackwood legacy." Julian laughed bitterly. Is that what this was about? Preserving the precious family name, making sure the next generation of Blackwoods would be born into the right circumstances, to the right kind of mother? Margaret said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. "Those girls, those daughters you tried to erase, they're more Blackwood than anyone I've ever met. Iris has the analytical mind that built this company. Violet has the curiosity and drive that transformed it into an empire." Julian leaned closer, his voice cold. "They are the Blackwood legacy, whether you accept it or not." "What do you intend to do?" Margaret asked finally. "About them? I intend to be their father, to make up for 7 stolen years." Julian gathered the documents. "And about you?" "That depends on whether you can accept them, accept Celeste as part of my life, part of our family. You can't seriously be considering rekindling a relationship with that, with Celeste." The correction was steel. "And yes, I am. Because she raised our daughters alone, working 2 jobs, never taking a penny of the money you offered, never burdening them with bitterness about their absent father. She gave them values and strength and love that all your wealth and social standing could never provide." He moved toward the door. "You have a choice to make, grandmother. Be their grandmother, A real grandmother who loves them for who they are, or remain the woman who tried to erase their existence. I won't allow anything in between. The door closed behind him with finality. Some bridges need to burn so that new ones can be built. The months that followed established a new rhythm in all their lives. Julian didn't just visit, he restructured. Board meetings were rescheduled around school events. Business trips were shortened to make weekend soccer games. His corporate world was bewildered by the transformation, but Julian didn't care. He'd found something worth more than any merger. "You missed the quarterly review again," his assistant informed him one afternoon. "I had a parent-teacher conference. The board is concerned. Then they can find a new CEO." Julian didn't look up from the drawings Violet had given him, a family portrait rendered in crayon, showing two girls, a woman with curly hair and a tall man holding their hands. This is more important. His support for Celeste was practical rather than showy. When a scholarship suddenly appeared to cover the twins' school fees, Celeste said nothing but sent him a look that conveyed both suspicion and grudging gratitude. When her ancient car finally died, a new but modest sedan appeared with a simple note for the girls' safety. No strings attached. She accepted these gestures cautiously, recognizing them for what they were. Not attempts to buy her affection, but genuine efforts to ease the burden she'd carried alone for so long. "You're stubborn," Julian told her one afternoon as they watched the twins play at the Marine Research Station where Celeste had finally resumed working. "I offer to fund your research outright, and you refuse. I've managed for 7 years. I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's partnership." He turned to face her. "You put your dreams on hold to raise our daughters. Now you don't have to do it alone. Let me share the weight so you can reclaim what you lost. I didn't lose it, I chose it. Then choose something more, for yourself, for them." His voice softened. "They deserve a mother who's fulfilled, not just surviving." The words struck deeper than Celeste wanted to admit. The following semester, she enrolled in classes to finish her marine biology degree. Julian rearranged his schedule to handle pickup on the days she had evening lectures. Mrs. Chen, their elderly neighbor, expanded her grandmother figure role. A network of support materialized, not replacing Celeste's independence, but bolstering it. And slowly, tentatively, something else began to grow. Late-night conversations after the girls were asleep. Shared laughter over the twins' antics. Moments when their hands brushed and neither pulled away. "This isn't just about the children anymore, is it?" Celeste asked one evening as they sat on her small balcony, watching the harbor lights reflect on dark water. "Was it ever?" Julian's gaze was steady. "I loved you 7 years ago, Celeste. I never stopped, even when I believed the worst. Love wasn't enough then, because we weren't allowed to fight for it, because lies got there before truth could." He reached for her hand. "But now we know. Now we can choose, not based on what we were told, but on what's real. And what's real? That I want a family, a real one. With you." His grip tightened. "Not just co-parenting, not just shared schedules and polite exchanges. I want to build something with you and our daughters, something that lasts." Celeste looked at their intertwined fingers, at the man who had fought his way back to them through 7 years of lies, at the father who read bedtime stories with funny voices and helped with math homework and never, not once, tried to buy their daughter's love instead of earning it. "I want that too," she admitted. "I think I've wanted it since the moment you walked into that bakery. Even when you thought I abandoned you? Especially then." Her smile was rueful. "Because even angry and hurt and terrified, some part of me still hoped it wasn't true." When he kissed her, it tasted like salt air and second chances. Like everything they'd lost and everything they were about to find. If this story is making you believe in the power of second chances, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Because the ending of this one, I promise you, will leave you in tears. The good kind. The February nor'easter came without warning. One moment the sky was ordinary gray. The next, wind was screaming off the Atlantic with a fury that sent fishing boats racing for harbor and families huddling behind shuttered windows. Julian was in New York, an unavoidable board meeting, the one he couldn't reschedule even for the new life he was building. Celeste was at the Marine Research Station, scrambling to secure equipment before the worst arrived. And the twins were at their after-school program, blissfully unaware that the world outside was tearing itself apart. The moment the storm hit, everything went wrong. Celeste's phone buzzed with Julian's text. Flights grounded, trying to charter something. "Are the girls safe?" At after school, She typed back, fighting to keep panic out of her response. Going to get them now. But the roads were already flooding. Seawater and rain combined to transform streets into rivers. Her car, the modest sedan Julian had given her, stalled halfway to the school, and by the time she reached the building on foot, soaked and terrified, she found it dark and empty. Everyone's been evacuated to the community center, a passing firefighter shouted over the howling wind. Higher ground, go. Celeste ran. The community center was chaos, families huddled together, children crying, volunteers distributing blankets and flashlights. She pushed through the crowd, searching desperately for 2 dark-haired 7-year-olds. Ma! Violet's voice cut through the pandemonium, and then Celeste was holding both her daughters, all 3 of them crying, the terror of separation giving way to overwhelming relief. We were so scared, Iris whispered, her glasses fogged and askew. The phones didn't work, and we couldn't call anyone. I'm here now. I've got you. They huddled together as the storm raged outside. Celeste's arms wrapped around her children like she could physically shield them from every danger in the world. Hours passed. The wind gradually softened. Emergency crews began assessment. And then, a commotion at the community center doors. Raised voices. Someone arguing that they needed to check the road conditions before. I don't care about the roads. My daughters are in there. Celeste's head snapped up. Julian. He stood in the doorway, soaking wet, his expensive clothes ruined, his face haggard with fear. He must have chartered a helicopter into the storm, must have driven through flooded streets, must have moved heaven and earth to reach them. Dad! The word exploded from Violet, the first time either girl had used it publicly, and then both twins were launching themselves across the shelter toward him. Julian caught them, sinking to his knees, clutching them so tightly Celeste could see his whole body shaking. You're safe, he kept repeating. Thank God, thank God. Later, after they'd made it home to find the apartment largely unscathed, after the twins were bathed and fed and finally asleep, Julian and Celeste sat in the darkness of the living room, too exhausted for lights, too wired for sleep. You flew through a hurricane, Celeste said. Technically, a nor'easter. You could have died. You could have too. His voice cracked. When I couldn't reach you, when the phones went down and I didn't know if you were safe, I've never been that scared in my life. Not in boardrooms, not in negotiations worth billions. Nothing compared to not knowing if you 3 were okay. Julian, I love them. The words poured out of him. Violet and Iris. I've loved them since the moment I saw them through that bakery window. But tonight made me realize I don't just want to be their father on a schedule. I don't want to be a CO parent who shows up for dinners and disappears. He turned to face her in the darkness. I want a family, a real one, all of us together. I want to wake up in the same house as my daughters every morning. I want to be there for every nightmare and every triumph and every ordinary Tuesday. He took her hands. I love you, Celeste. I want to spend the rest of my life with you and our girls. I want to make up for 7 lost years, with 70 more. Will you let me? Celeste thought about the woman she'd been that morning in the bakery, counting crumpled bills, praying $50 would be enough. She thought about 7 years of struggle and sacrifice and never quite enough. And then she thought about this man, who had chartered a helicopter into a storm, who knelt on her threadbare carpet to meet his daughters, who never once tried to buy love when he could have earned it instead. Yes, she said. When they kissed, it tasted like salt and rain and the beginning of everything. 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, an unexpected car pulled up to the family's new home, a coastal cottage Julian had purchased specifically because it reminded Celeste of her childhood summers. Margaret Blackwood, 83 years old and more fragile than Julian had ever seen her, sat in the back seat. She wants to meet them, the driver explained through the window. She said to tell you she's ready to try. Julian and Celeste exchanged glances. That's up to the girls, Celeste said finally. They decide. When presented with the situation, Violet and Iris considered it with the gravity only children can muster for adult problems. She's the one who kept us apart? Iris asked. Yes. And she's sorry. She says she wants to try to do better. Violet chewed her lip. People can learn, right? Like when Marcus in our class was mean, but then he changed and now he's nice. Sometimes people can change, Celeste agreed carefully. But it doesn't mean you have to forgive them right away, or ever. That's your choice. The twins looked at each other, that silent communication they'd shared since before birth. We'll meet her, Iris decided. Once. If she's mean, we don't have to see her again. And if she's nice, Violet added, Maybe we can teach her to be a grandmother, since she's never done it before. Margaret Blackwood, who had controlled a fortune and manipulated destinies, was brought to her knees by the simple, conditional kindness of two 7-year-old girls. She didn't grovel, didn't make excuses, simply said, "I made terrible mistakes. I hurt your mother and father, and I missed knowing you. I would like the chance to learn who you are, if you'll allow me." "Do you like butterflies?" Violet asked. I don't know much about them." "That's okay, I can teach you. I know everything about butterflies. And I'll teach you math," Iris offered, "since Dad says you're the one who taught him." Something shifted in Margaret's ancient eyes, something that might have been the beginning of tears. "I would like that very much." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Perhaps not ever, fully. But it was possibility. And sometimes, that's enough. 1 year to the day after that fateful morning, the Blackwood family returned to Harbor Light Bakery. Not as fractured pieces, but as a whole. Julian and Celeste, their rings glinting in the autumn light. Violet and Iris, now 8 years old and more confident than ever. Eleanor Hayes, waiting at their usual table with tears already forming in her eyes. "I knew," she said, embracing Celeste fiercely. "That day when he walked in, I saw him look at those girls, and I knew. You never said anything. Wasn't my story to tell." Eleanor smiled through her tears. "But I prayed. Every day since, I prayed it would work out." They settled into their booth, all 4 of them now, and the twins ordered with the authority of children who knew they could have anything on the menu but chose their favorites anyway. "Sunrise pancakes," Violet declared. "And sea glass cookies," Iris added. Celeste reached into her purse and produced a familiar item, worn leather, soft from years of handling. She placed $50 on the table between her daughters. Julian raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Our tradition." Celeste smiled. "Whatever they want, as long as they choose together, and as long as they stay within budget. But I know you could buy this entire bakery." She cut him off gently. "But this was how we learned that love isn't measured in price tags. I want them to remember that. Always." Julian looked at the crumpled bills, at the daughters carefully calculating costs, at the woman who had taught them that wealth and worth were different things. "I understand," he said softly. When the pancakes arrived, topped with birthday candles even though their actual birthday wasn't for another month, the twins closed their eyes and prepared to wish. "What are you wishing for?" Celeste asked when the candles were blown out. The twins exchanged their secret look. "We can't tell," Violet said seriously. "But also, it doesn't matter anymore." "Because our biggest wish already came true," Iris added, adjusting her glasses with the gesture that had always reminded Celeste of Julian. "Last year, when we wished for our family to be whole," she looked at her mother, her father, her sister, "and now it is." Julian reached for Celeste's hand under the table. She felt him trembling slightly, the billionaire CEO, the corporate titan, undone by the simple truth of a child's words. "Happy anniversary," he murmured. "Happy anniversary," she agreed. Outside the bakery window, the harbor sparkled in the morning light. Fishing boats rocked gently in the tide. Somewhere, a seagull called across the water. And inside, a family that had been torn apart by lies found its way back together through truth, perseverance, and love that refused to die. This story isn't really about a billionaire CEO. It's not about money or mansions or private helicopters. It's about what happens when we choose truth over assumptions, forgiveness over bitterness, family over everything else. It's about a mother who counted 50 crumpled dollars and turned them into a tradition of love. A father who discovered his children and immediately began dismantling the life he'd built so he could be part of theirs. 2 little girls who wished so hard for so long that eventually, miraculously, the universe heard them. And it's about you, because here's what I know. You're watching this story for a reason. Maybe you've been separated from someone you love by lies or misunderstanding. Maybe you've been given a second chance you're not sure you deserve. Maybe you're raising children alone and wondering if it will ever get easier. Or maybe you just needed to believe, for 20 minutes, that love can survive even the cruelest circumstances. I want you to know, it can. Not easily, not without struggle, not without choosing every single day to fight for the people who matter most, but it can. So here's what I'm asking you to do right now. First, hit that like button. Not just because it helps this video, but because it's a way of saying I believe in second chances too. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. I tell stories like this every week, and I don't want you to miss a single one. Third, leave a comment below. Tell me, Do you believe some wounds are too deep to heal, or do you believe in the power of forgiveness? I read every single comment, and your story might just inspire someone else who's struggling. Remember, the families we build are shaped not by circumstance, but by choice, by showing up, by refusing to give up on the people we love. $50 and a dream. That's all Celeste had that morning in the bakery, but it turned out to be everything. Until next time, this is Mr. Andy Love Stories, where every story leaves you believing in love again. The end.